Hello, my friend. In this video, I'm going to show you how to get Patreon supporters and how you can build an audience that wants to support both you and the art that you create. So let's jump right into this. So the best way to get Patreon supporters is to first build an audience and community around your art or your creative endeavor off of Patreon, and to freely provide that audience and community with overwhelming value. When you have an audience with an engaged community, you'll then be able to successfully grow your Patreon by offering them membership tiers that are easy to understand, priced effectively, and have perks and rewards that continue to provide overwhelming value. So in this video, we're going to go over, how you can actually build this audience, make sure that that audience is engaged as a community, and then the actual kind of way that you can build out membership tiers in a really effective way that people are actually going to want to join them. Before diving into that, I quickly wanted to mention that I've also built an article out on this topic. So if you'd like to read along or follow along, anything like that, you can simply Google how to get Patreon supporters Best Friends Club, and you'll be able to access this article for free. So with that said, let's jump right back into this. So how can you promote your Patreon and actually get Patreon supporters? So when first figuring out how you can promote your Patreon page and get real paying supporters, you need to first understand that Patreon is a membership and monetization platform, and it is in no way a discovery platform. Because Patreon has no features for potential patrons or followers to find your Patreon page, it is completely up to you to do all of the work bringing people to your Patreon page and convincing them to sign up. So what is the best way to do this? Like I mentioned, the best way to get Patreon supporters then is to first build an audience and community around your art or creative endeavor off of Patreon, and to freely provide that audience and community with overwhelming value. Remember that Patreon will not bring in new fans, but instead will simply allow your current fans the opportunity to choose to support you financially. When you have an audience with an engaged community, only then will you be able to successfully grow your Patreon by offering them membership tiers that they actually want to join. So let's figure out how you can start doing this yourself by starting with how you can build an audience by using something called a recurring content strategy. So how can you build an audience with a recurring content strategy? So the best way to build an audience that wants to support you and your art or creative endeavor is to consistently release new content by combining a recurring content strategy with a content calendar. So a recurring content strategy is simply a defined structure of different content types that you release on a regular schedule. So for me in particular, this is something like posting performance videos on Mondays, unreleased songs, like clips of unreleased songs on Wednesdays, and promotional content for one of my new releases on Fridays. A content calendar then simply takes the content that you've mapped out with your recurring content strategy and plots out when each piece of content should go live and where on a calendar, so that you can actually follow your plan. So it's basically like saying this post is going to go on this day, this post is going to go on that day, that kind of thing. And you use your recurring content strategy to guide that creation of that content calendar. So by releasing content on a regular schedule with a defined structure like this, you can make sure that the content you create is both relevant to your ultimate goal as a creator and keeps your audience hooked and wanting to come back for more. So how do you actually create a recurring content strategy for your creative project? So to create a recurring content strategy, you simply need to decide on what content you want to create and what content will be most valuable to your audience. The very first step that you should do is to take the time to clearly define your ultimate goal as an artist or a creative. So, for example, this might be, do you want to perform often in front of a loving audience of thousands of fans? Or do you want to release new music and have it supported and streamed thousands of times? Make sure that you are very clear on what that ultimate goal is that you are really trying to achieve, and everything else will fall into place, as you'll see here. So to make sure that you don't feel like you're wasting your time and energy on creating content, you should take a moment to make sure that the content that you do create is always supporting that ultimate goal. This way it doesn't feel like a waste of time and a waste of energy, because it can be very challenging putting out content really frequently. So if your goal is to perform live, then your content should be of you performing live in different ways. So this could be performance videos, live jams, live improvisations, you performing a cover song live, those kinds of things. If your goal is to successfully release new music, your content should focus on your music. So that could be clips of unreleased songs, clips of live jams of your songs, those kinds of things. In addition to having 2 or 3 types of content that you release often that supports your ultimate goal, I'd also recommend releasing some content that will help your audience connect with you. Things like photos and videos of you, stories, behind the scenes content, and things that you're interested in outside of your main creative project. So if you're an artist releasing music, what are some things that you're interested outside of creating and releasing music? There's got to be something, and these things are really interesting because it helps attach your audience to you and makes them want to build a community around you, which is very interesting. So once you have an idea of what different types of content you actually want to make are, you can simply map out when these content types will go live and where, which different social media platforms. And you do this on a calendar to make sure that you're actually held accountable to carrying out your strategy and your plan, really. So from here, what you can do is tweak your strategy as you're actually carrying it out based on how your audience reacts to your content, as well as how much you enjoy creating these different types of content. So I think it's important that you look for a balance in your recurring content strategy between what your audience enjoys, so what they're liking, what they're commenting on a lot, clearly what they seem to be enjoying, but you also want to balance that between what you can realistically create over and over and over again without burning yourself out or hating yourself. You want to be enjoying creating this type of content. If it's something that makes you feel foolish, or if it's something that's very hard for you to make, it's going to be hard for you to constantly put that out, even if your audience is enjoying that. So you do want to find a balance here. And next, I want to dive in a little bit more into the recurring content strategy before moving forward, because it's actually a lot more important than you might think. So in addition to organically growing your audience on a social media platform that will potentially then support you on Patreon, regularly releasing content can also be a great way to tease the kind of content that a potential patron can get when they become a supporter. So this could be things like you're posting clips to social media, but then when they sign up to become an actual paying patron, they'll get the full video that clip was from. It'll also help you learn what kind of content you should provide in your membership tiers. And this can be by seeing what types of content that your social media followers are engaging with. But this can also be simply the fact of having an audience that you've built that you can simply ask for ideas and see what things they would like to actually join in different tiers. And lastly, it can be a great way to actually practice fulfilling the tiered content you plan to offer before actually launching on Patreon, so that you actually clearly understand the costs in both time and money of what it costs for you to deliver on these content tiers, so that you don't overpromise and underdeliver when you actually are running your Patreon page. So remember again that Patreon is a membership platform where your patrons pay you monthly to get access. So it is expected of you to put out new content regularly, whether this is monthly, weekly, or even on a daily basis. So this means that content is both king when it comes to getting supporters on Patreon in the first place, as well as making sure that they actually stick around. So just like a gym membership, if supporters don't feel like they are getting any use out of it, they will eventually stop paying for your Patreon, or they'll unfollow you on social media and never get around to supporting you on Patreon in the first place. So recurring content allows you to build your audience, learn what to offer your audience, as well as make sure your supporters keep coming back for more. So next, you have the audience. Next, we want to build a community around your audience. So how to create a community for and around your audience. Many people will support a Patreon page because they are looking for a space where they can feel connected to people that like similar things as them, in addition to being able to be more connected to the actual creator themselves. This is why creating a community where your audience can engage with you and your tribe is so important. So how do you actually create a community or a sense of community with your audience? So one, you can start by simply engaging back with the followers who are already engaging with your recurring content on social media. This is comments, messages. You probably have a clear understanding of that. But you can also take things to the next level by having a dedicated community space like a Discord server. And something very interesting about Discord servers is that these can actually be linked to specific Patreon tiers, so that, say, if they're signing up for tier, 3 or something, they get access to specific Discord channels, that kind of things. And I do have a video above that you can check out if you want to learn how you can connect Discord in particular to different Patreons and actually different membership tiers in general. So that's pretty useful. And then lastly, you can create a sense of community around your creative project by having very visible fundraising goals and being transparent with how you plan to use any of the funds that are coming your way. So by being open with how you plan to use money that you receive for, new gear, ambitious projects that you want to do, or even simply being able to continue living while making your art and giving it out to free into the world, you make it clear to potential patrons what your vision is. And I think this is really important. You also make it very clear that it does cost you money to be able to continue doing what you're doing and to be able to create the art that you're doing. And, it makes it clear that there's money and time that you're putting into this, and they may want to support you because of that. So one of the bigger things then is, so you have the audience and you have an engaged community around it, and you actually want to, build up the Patreon and actually have people sign up for it. Again, remember that it's important for you to have that audience so that you can bring them to your Patreon page. Patreon does not have any kind of discoverability kind of stuff, right? And then once you're there, it's also your responsibility to make sure that they want to sign up. So how do you do this? And you do this by making effective Patreon tiers. So at the end of the day, the main reason that anyone in the world is going to sign up for your Patreon is if they completely understand how being a patron benefits them and they feel like they are getting overwhelming value for the costs that it is to become a patron. Although some patrons may want to become a supporter because they feel good supporting you and want to help you achieve your vision, this is still an example of how they are benefiting and getting value from your Patreon. This is why it is important to make sure that the membership tiers that you offer on your Patreon are easy to understand, have perks and rewards that provide overwhelming value, and are priced effectively. The best way to create highly effective tiers for your Patreon or membership is by leveraging a concept used in marketing called marketing funnels or funnel mapping. A marketing funnel is visualized as an inverted pyramid and is used to break down what you offer to your audience in 3 distinct parts. Here is a beautiful drawing that I did of this inverted pyramid for the funnel. So the first part at the top here is called the top of funnel, or TOFU, and it represents the cheapest but most easily accessible offerings. The next smaller part here is called the middle of funnel, or MOFU, and represents slightly more expensive offerings that less of your audience will take you up on. And as you move down to the even smallest part, it represents very high ticket offerings that very, very few of your audiences will take, and this is simply called the bottom of funnel, or BOFU. So by leveraging a marketing funnel like this, you can simplify what you offer and organize it in a way that is very easy for both you and your potential patrons to follow. So when starting out, it can be a very good idea to offer only one tier for each of the funnel steps so that it's easier for you to manage the different membership experiences, and so that your potential patrons aren't put off by having paralysis by analysis, like seeing 56 different patron tiers and not knowing which one to pick. So what exactly should you offer at these different levels? Your top of funnel offer should be something simple, priced around $5 for, say, simple support or simple access, getting things behind the scenes or early. Your middle of funnel offer should be priced around $30 for even more access or content, and your bottom of funnel tier should be priced around $300 for exclusive access, content, or services like one-on-one training or coaching or consulting, anything like this. So for a much closer look at these individual funnel steps and what you should offer, and kind of like the mindset and mentality of what you want to be offering specifically for these things, in much more detail, there is a full guide that I created, and I'll link to it above. And basically it goes over how you can really, really in-depth create different Patreon membership tiers for these 3 different levels. So with that said, I don't know if you noticed, but my camera did just die, or rather my light just died. So I'm going to stop the video here. If you want to learn a bit more about, this kind of stuff, on the article you can see here, there's also 6 additional tips for getting Patreon supporters that you can use. There's a whole bunch here that you can look through, a bunch of common questions that are around this topic that you can check out. The article is pretty useful as well. I might make a video on some of these extra sections of this article in time, but for now, this is all I have time for. So with that said, hopefully you found this video useful and you have a better understanding of what it really takes to get Patreon supporters for your Patreon page or your membership. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe and all that stuff. And good luck on creating your Patreon page and getting actual people to sign up for it. And I'll see you in the next video, my friend. Have a good one.